Hi guys, Rafael Marcolino here, and welcome to Drum Sapiens every week with a new drum lesson for you. Today I'm gonna show you a very simple but effective way to create new textures and a little difference in your groove. This is a great tool when you have to play the same groove throughout a long period of time inside a song, or if you have to play the same groove for the whole song. You need to be clever if you want to create different textures and different feelings inside this song using always the same groove. So if you have to keep the same kick and snare pattern, it's cool to think about what you are doing with the hi-hat or the ride cymbal, but I'm gonna show you those examples using the hi-hat. I really like to use these syncopated 16th note figures to add a little more texture in my grooves. And there are several ways to do that, but I'm gonna show you my two favorite syncopated hi-hat figures using 16th notes. So for you to understand what I'm talking about, I'm gonna play a very straight groove and then I'm gonna apply those two syncopated figures over this groove. So the first groove is gonna be kick drum on beats 1 and 3, snare drum on beats 2 and 4. It's the most basic groove of all, and I'm gonna play with 8 notes on the hi-hat just for you to understand the starting point of this lesson. So my first hi-hat variation for this groove is gonna be playing 3 16th notes and not playing the 4th 16th note of each beat. So we're gonna play 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and we're gonna keep the same groove. And that's the first syncopated hi-hat variation that I'm gonna use in this lesson. And we can also permutate those hi-hat notes to create different syncopated variations. And I'm gonna show you a second one that we're not gonna play the second 16th note in each beat. So now our hi-hat pattern is gonna be 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. And I'm gonna use the same groove, kick drum on beats 1 and 3, backbeat on beats 2 and 4 for you to understand the difference of this pattern comparing to the previous example. This is very simple, but in my opinion, creates completely different feels in a groove. It's the same syncopated figure, but permutated inside the beat. So those two different syncopated hi-hat variations can add different textures to your groove. And I'm gonna show you two more grooves, two more complex grooves that it's actually way more complex to have the coordination of these hi-hat patterns going. But I think it's a very cool exercise because if you want to have freedom with those hi-hat patterns, you need to challenge yourself in terms of coordination. So our second groove is gonna be kick drum on beat 1 and a second kick drum between the end of 1 and beat 2 on the last 16th note of beat 1. Then we're gonna play the backbeat on beat 2 and we're gonna have a second snare hit between the end of 2 and beat 3. Then we're gonna play the kick drum on the end of 3. We're not playing on the downbeat of 3 anymore. And then we have our second backbeat on beat 4. I'm first gonna play this groove again, playing 8 notes on the hi-hat for you to understand the groove. Then I'm gonna apply those two hi-hat variations as well. Now I'm gonna play the same groove, but playing the first syncopated hi-hat variation, that is 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and. And I'm gonna add some ghost notes as well, just to add a little extra texture to this groove for you to understand how we can still add more elements to the groove, but I really recommend that you try those grooves without ghost notes before because of the coordination challenge that you might have when playing those patterns on the hi-hat and playing those displaced notes in 16th notes with your kick drum and your snare drum. So our first hi-hat variation with this second groove sounds like this. And now we can use the same groove with the second hi-hat variation. That is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. Check it out. And as the final challenge of our lesson, I'm gonna throw you another groove, and now we're gonna displace the backbeat. So we're gonna play the kick drum on beat 1, but we're not gonna play the snare on beat 2. We're gonna play the snare on the last 16th note of beat 1. Then we're gonna play the kick drum on the end of 2, and we're gonna play 2 kick drums in a row in 16th notes on the end of 3. So to coordinate those 16th notes on the kick drum with those 2 variations of the syncopated hi-hat, it's not that easy. The notes that are played together have to be really locked together. And then we have our backbeat on beat 4. So I'm gonna first play this groove with 8 notes on the hi-hat just for you to understand it. Then I'm gonna apply those hi-hat variations. Now, bringing the first variation, 1EN, 2EN, 3EN, 4EN, to this groove, sounds like this. And as our last example, now adding the second hi-hat variation, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, in my opinion, makes this groove a little bit harder, because now those 16th notes in a row that we are playing with the kick drum are gonna be played together with the hi-hat, because they're being played on the end of beat 3. So you have to really lock those notes together, and in my opinion, that's a little bit harder because we're not playing every 16th note of the bar, so you have to really coordinate those things. So here it is, our last example. This is a very simple strategy. Those patterns are not that hard, but it can be challenging depending on the kick drum and the snare patterns, because you really have to pay attention on which notes are being played together with the hi-hat and which notes are being played on the 16th note that we are not playing the hi-hat. It's a very cool exercise, and I think it's a very cool strategy when you want to create a different texture to a groove and you can't actually change the kick drum and the snare pattern. So I hope you liked this lesson. Don't forget that if you want to receive PDF files containing transcriptions of every exercise I show here, go to subscribe.drummosapiens.com and subscribe to the mailing list. And I see you on the next lesson.